Hello, everyone, and welcome to session 3 of our webinar series. So in today's session, we're going to go over sort of our usual ideas, highlights, like we do on all our previous sessions. So I've got 5 ideas for you guys today. I'm going to talk about the incoming email marker line and a couple little tips and tricks there. Tomcat URL Redirects, and look at FootPrints license usage tracking. This is something that's a little bit beyond the traditional FootPrints configuration. We show you some neat things there that can give you some additional information come renewal time, or come just anytime you're looking to either expand functionality in FootPrints or shrink it down. Okay, so as usual, my name is Nick Room. I'm an employee here with RJR Innovations. We're a partner of BMC Software. I've been in the business since 2004, and the rest of the slide hasn't changed, so I'm just going to skip through that one. Okay, so last time on session 2, so just quickly recapping what we covered last time, which was before the holidays. So Happy New Year to everyone. Hope 2023 is starting off well for you guys. So you can see here the ideas that we covered last time and sort of some of the topics. As usual, you can see the recording available on rjrinnovations.com/webinars. We will have this webinar as well uploaded there. And kind of like I probably mentioned last time, give us a couple days to do our little finesse there before we throw it up. All right, so without further ado, we'll get started straight into the ideas highlights. So like I said, I got 5 ideas for you guys. I will try to post the links in chat for you guys to copy from. Obviously you have them here, you can print screen this. So I'll start off with each one here. So we'll start with the first one, validation only. So this is one of my personal favorites here, kind of a pet peeve of mine, especially when you're doing, implementations, creating new import packages, and you're not sure, whether the source is CSV, SQL, client management, whatever the case, you're not sure, do I have the data correct in my source? Do I have the appropriate field types or drop-down choices in my destination? It'd be nice to be able to run an import as a validation only. Now, of course, when you run an import, it does validate before it does the import, and that's why you then, end up with a bunch of errors. But usually what this means is if you have 1,000 rows and 200 of those failed, you have 800 records that were created, 200 that failed. So now you either have to modify your import source so that you eliminate the ones that were successful, and that of its own is not necessarily easy to do, or you rerun the import again, and depending on what you're importing, you may end up with duplicates. So for something like this, when you're building a new import for the first time, I always recommend build it out and test, run it a bunch of times until you got all the errors fixed out, then run it in prod. And the reason for that is because we cannot validate only. So that's what this feature request here is for. Next one, provide an ability to deactivate a user account. So this feature request used to have a slightly different, more sarcastic title to it. Way back when FootPrints first came out, you had the ability to disable a user, and that could be for a variety of reasons. You want to free up a named license, the user's on some kind of leave, but will be coming back. So, maybe in the meantime, you don't want them logging into FootPrints, whatever the case may be. So they kind of had the ability to disable users. Unfortunately, it didn't work. So we submitted a bug report for that. That bug got quote unquote fixed by BMC, basically telling us, well, oops, that wasn't supposed to be there. We removed the feature. So this is the feature request to bring it back. As kind of a little fun poke here, when you look at your list of users, I know this is very small here, but if I go, actually, let me go to my FootPrints VM here. So if I go to my FootPrints VM, when you look at your list of users here, there's a column here called status active. That is cosmetic at this point. That used to be relevant back when that feature existed. But essentially, this is now a defect that this column is even here at all. So this does nothing until such a time as this feature request comes back. Next one, create an issue from an instant talk chat session. So as you may or may not know, FootPrints does have a chat feature built in. It's not the most robust functionality, and it's generally something we recommend you do not use, primarily because when we implement at client sites, they already have a chat feature that they're using, whether that's Skype or Zoom or anything else, right? You usually have a chat feature already that you're using, so might as well keep using that, because the FootPrints one won't really give you much more. The biggest thing missing is this one here, being able to create an issue from it, right? It'd be nice to allow your end users to chat to your agents, to solve the problem, and then the agent can, like, one button click to create a ticket out of that chat session. Currently, that doesn't exist, so that means that, if you were to enable chat, unless the agent manually creates a ticket themselves, there's basically no history of this interaction having taken place. So when you start looking at, if you're a service desk manager and you start looking at your metrics, you might see that, hey, particular users' resolution numbers are lower than everyone else on the team, right? Hey, why are you only solving like 5 tickets a day when everyone else is solving 20? Well, then the answer might be, yeah, but I'm getting a lot of these chat sessions. Okay, but if you're not logging them, no one knows, right? And so that might lead to, well, sorry, you're underperforming. Here's your pink slip, goodbye. So nice feature here to be able to have that. Next one up, mandatory comments for voting. So as you may or may not know, when you're using the approval process in FootPrints, there's, other than being able to configure who the approvers are and what the approval or rejection rate percentages are, does it have to be 10%? Does it have to be 2 people? Does it have to be unanimous? Other than that, we have very little control over the approval process. So when you're looking at like the approval windows, the approval box on the form, now I probably should have had that on the screen here. Let me, maybe I'll try to do that in a little bit. But when you're looking at your approval window, you can approve, you can reject, you can defer, you can add a comment, but none of that is configurable. So for example, I can't say make comments mandatory on voting or make comments mandatory if you reject, things of that nature. So that's one of the requests we see oftentimes when it comes to approvals, is to be able to force an approver to put in some comments, especially if you're going to reject, right? Why are you rejecting? Oh, I'm rejecting because your dates are not correct. I'm rejecting because your rollout plan is insufficient. Or I'm just rejecting because this is a bad idea, bad change request, and we're not going to do this, period. Of course, they can add in their comments, but it's not required. Next up, being able to map all the user attributes when you're doing an import. So this one here is both relevant on an initial configuration of FootPrints, but ongoing as well. Probably many of you have, nightly LDAP imports to create customer users or potentially agent users into your system from AD or potentially from any other source. Well, as it stands right now, and I mean, I might have to go through this list. I created this 7 years ago, but like I'm looking at this one, that's possible. But like pretty much all of this stuff here is not possible to import. So when you're creating an import, if you want to use the second or third emails, or you want to use container supervisors, this is a big one I talk a lot about in my training. Very useful feature, except that you can't map to it when you're doing your import. So that means that you have to constantly be setting those manually. So this feature here would just be, hey, when we're importing some users, please allow us to map all the attributes, so we don't have to like import the first half of them, then go and edit their records to do the second. That's pretty much it for the feature requests that I have here. Let me quickly just copy these links here into chat so that you guys can have them real quick. And then we will move on here. So I'm going to put them in the same order as how I presented. So the first one is validation. The second one, oh, come on here. Let me select this. The second one is going to be deactivating users. The third one is going to be the instant talk, creating a ticket. Fourth one is mandatory comments on voting. And the last one is being able to map all the user attributes. So you have them all there. As usual, you need to be signed into your BMC account, and then you can upvote those feature requests. And then, of course, only upvote them if you really feel they would be beneficial to you. We want to prevent just arbitrary voting because, then it doesn't provide the information BMC would need. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about the incoming email marker line, Tomcat URL Redirects, and the FootPrints license tracking. So I'll start with the marker line. So a few things here you may or may not be aware. On the current versions of FootPrints, you can now change what the markers. So I guess I'm going to talk two things about the marker line. So one is going to be like the line that you would have like in the subject of your email, ticket equals ticket number, so that you can come relate it back. The other one I want to talk about is the marker line that separates like the old text from the new, right? The please type your reply above this line. So on current versions of FootPrints, they brought this out I think about a year ago now, is you can actually change, incoming email workspace. No, it is. Or is it notifications? It's hiding somewhere. There it is, notifications. So in notification system, you can now change what the text is. Now that's like, it hasn't changed really the functionality. It's still global. So you can put whatever you want in here. The one thing to note is with prior versions, it had, and I forget the exact wording. It was something along the lines of, when replying, please type your text above this line. And then below it, it had a line, which was like a bunch of underscores, put together to make a line. That sometimes led to some confusion. People would put literally above the line, which was kind of funny because, no one ever does that. But now with this update here, they got rid of the actual line there. So the only thing that's going to show up is the text here. So definitely if you're upgrading, or if you've already upgraded, I would check that, because it probably says, please type your text above this line. I might remove the word line and just, this is one here that I've put in. Now, very important, you want to put something in here that is still kind of unique. So that's, in part why I added the asterisks here as well, because what FootPrints will do when it reads the email, the moment it comes across a line that has this text in it, that's where it stops. So if you put something simple that someone else might type in casually in their email, then FootPrints is going to stop there, right? There's nothing special other than what the characters are. But you can see here, you can configure it for the system, and then obviously for the different languages that you may have. As an interesting fact here, if ever you wanted to send an email out where you don't want your users to reply, so hey, no reply at footprints.com or something like that, right? And you might put in the subject line, please do not reply to this. And then what's the first thing they're going to see in the body? They're going to see this. If you want to remove that, you can kind of do a little bit of a MacGyver for that. It's not perhaps ideal, right? Because there's some limitations, but I'll show you what you can do here. So if I go into my workspace and I go into my notifications, so if I look at, and this is something we do with the FootPrints Advanced Starter template already. So if I look at the business rule to notify, for example, notify the contact on create. So I have, the action, send email to, right? Nothing special there. You guys are familiar with that one, send email to. However, if I look at the notify contact on close, and I'm just going to pause this real quick because I need to come here, into here, back here, resume. Okay, so in this notify contact on close, you'll see that the action is send survey email. Now, the reason I'm doing this is primarily because my closure email, I want to include the survey link to it. So I didn't configure anything special here. There's no random sampling. It's an internal survey, and it's basically my default close my close email template. So what that looks like I go to my emails, right? If I look at, a ticket creation, right? So here's a ticket creation. You can see there's the marker line, and then there's the email template. And then if I look at a closure one, I'll have one at some point. There's a closure one. So this one is a survey email, right? Because I have this, right? Hey, if you want to fill out the survey, click here. So I don't do the random sampling. I don't do a second email afterwards. I just bundle everything in one. The potentially unintended benefit, because I'm using the survey notification, you'll notice I don't have the marker line. Please type your reply above, because the expected behavior is that they won't reply to this. Now, you can use the send survey email, and you don't actually have to put the survey link in there, right? That's just a variable in the email template. So you could use that action to send an email where you don't want them to reply, and then it won't have that marker line adding some confusion. The big thing you just got to keep in mind is your actions as to who you can send it to are limited. You can send it to the contact or to a specific email address, which this is frankly useless 99% of the time. So long as whoever you want to notify is the contact on a record, you can use this. If you wanted to notify someone that's in an assignee field, for example, you wouldn't be able to use this. But if it's a contact, you'd be able to use this action in a manner that it wasn't really intended to, so that you don't have that marker line. Now, the second half of talking about the marker line that I wanted to cover is, if I go back over here, is the subject line, right? So you're probably long used to, especially if it's something like a creation or an update email, and I want them to be able to reply, I need to have at least ticket equals ticket number in the subject line, and only if you're using a prefix that is unique in the system. So I can do it this way. That avoids needing to use the sort of the default behavior, which I think I can pull up an example somewhere of a task. Yeah, see, so this is the default subject line, right? Ticket equals this, item equals this, and that makes for an ugly subject line. What we have recently become aware of, and I don't know if this was a always there in FootPrints or not. Certainly, if it was always there, it was never really documented all that well. Is this no longer has to be in the subject line. You can have it in the body as well, and it'll work. A few caveats with having it in the body. So here in the subject line, you can see that it's not at the start of the subject line. I've got this text ahead of it. If you put it in the body, it does have to be at the beginning of the subject line, the beginning of the line of the body. You can't have it anywhere else. We had kind of gone through some testing scenarios here, and if I pull up this image here, I know it's going to look a little overwhelming, but basically these are 10 separate emails. You can see one email here, another email here, another email here, here, right? And we've just gone through some test cases to find out, what worked and what didn't. And so, for example, this worked. This updated that incident. This also worked. It updated the incident. This also worked here. This one here, you can see here, for example, I've got two different ticket numbers. So it'll grab whichever one it finds first. So it updated ticket 1101, not ticket 1100. In this case here, updated ticket 2000. This case here, also ticket 2000. In this case here, created a new ticket because this is not at the front of, there's something ahead of it. However, fun fact here, if subject is bolded, and I don't know why BMC's code is like that. If subject is bolded, it will work. So here it did update that ticket. Here still updated that ticket, and then here did not update that ticket. So, if you want to play it safe, keep your marker in the subject line. But if ever you wanted to remove it from the subject line, you could. Just be aware, we've already identified some scenarios. If you remove it from the subject line, we've identified some scenarios where that can cause a problem, such as if I'm an end user and I had a ticket open with BMC and I worked on it and I had some email conversations, and then I want to forward that back to FootPrints to create a new ticket. If it doesn't find something in the subject line, but then eventually finds it in the body, it will update or attempt to update that older ticket rather than just create a new ticket. All right, so that's it for the email marker line. Next one up is Tomcat URL Redirects. So this is something we actually use in-house, such that if you wanted to connect to our instance of FootPrints, you would go to support.rjrinnovations.com. That's it. Don't even have to put a port number. We've flipped the ports around, so Tomcat, instead of listening on 8080, is listening on port 80. And then we have a redirect, so that you go support.rjrinnovations.com. It automatically redirects you to /footprints/service desk. And there are a couple different ways to do that, but the way we've done it, I believe, is probably the simplest way. If I pull up my notepad over here, where did it go? Where did it go? Oh, it's in my VM. Over here, notepad. So basically, is by modifying a file to include this. So if you go to where Tomcat is installed, right? You're probably used to, I can go into bin for the 9W. You're used to, I can go into conf for either the Catalina folder or the server XML file. But then if you go into web apps and root, there's going to be this index.jsp file here. Now, this file here is configured so that if you were to just hit the root, you would get to the Tomcat management UI, right? If I pull up FootPrints and I just go, localhost :8080, it'll take me to the management UI. So that's what that index.jsp file is. So this little trick I'm showing you will actually remove this. You won't have access to this anymore unless you were to put it somewhere else. Not a big deal, because from a FootPrints perspective, you never have to go here. All right, so back over here. So you would basically change this file over here to have this content. And the important part is basically here. And so you put whatever your URL that you want to redirect to. So here, we've added that /footprint/service desk. So now if I were to hit the root, it's going to redirect me to that. Okay, next up, FootPrints license usage tracking. This is kind of my favorite topic of the day here. This is something that was custom developed into the FootPrints Administrator, the FootPrints Advanced starter template. And it's a way of counting your licenses, your FootPrints licenses, your named licenses, your concurrent licenses. When you first bought FootPrints, hopefully, you went through some kind of exercise to determine how many users you need, right? Typically, we will say, if a user is going to be in the system now, and I'm talking about agent users only, not customer users. They're not licensed. You have an unlimited number of those. So it's really just your agent users. How many of them should be named? How many of them should be float? Well, the named ones, usually what we will say is if they're going to be in the system for at least half the day, which is typically going to be everyone on level 1, maybe some people on level 2. If they're going to be in FootPrints half the day, they should have a named license. Now, that's also going to include your FootPrints administrators, and that's feature or limitation, depending on your point of view of FootPrints. You cannot create a system administrator on a concurrent license. But so, everyone that's going to be in there half the day, plus your admins, that's the number of named licenses you should have. And then for everyone else, usually there's a ratio. The average ratio is about 2.5 to 3 people per concurrent license. So if I have, if I have 50 users in total, and I know that 20 of them are always going to be in the system, I'm going to need 20 named licenses. For everyone else, the other 30, I'm going to divide that by 3. It's going to give me 10. I'm going to need 10 concurrent licenses. So, all right, that's great. You went through that exercise. Those are the licenses you purchased. Every year, come renewal time, your renewal rep's going to be contacting you saying, here's your quote to renew your licenses. The question might come up, well, do you need more licenses? Potentially, do you need fewer licenses? Do you need to flip licenses around? Hey, I've got too many named, not enough concurrent, or vice versa. Or I'm planning on onboarding a new team, or I did onboard a new team. Do I need more licenses? Unfortunately, it's very hard to have that educated discussion, and you kind of have to make a guess. With sort of footprints out of the box because there's no reporting on that. And I'm talking, you know, even on the older footprints, version 11 and prior, before the redesign, kind of the same thing. And so what I've designed, it's part of the Footprints Advanced Starter template, but if you're interested in it, it can also be sort of extrapolated from that and provided to you guys. You know, you can contact us for information on that. But what it looks like is over here, and this is available to the administrator. So over here in the session and license usage. So first of all, I track, you know, who's logged into the system right away. I mean, this you can kind of get from your users list already by sorting on this. But having it here also gives you a history. So I can see everyone who's logged in, you know, logged in and out, what their time was. So if ever you need to do that for audit purposes. And then for licensing, we have the license counts. Now, we've changed this recently in about the last 6 months or so. Previously, this would run once an hour. Now it runs every 15 minutes to give you a more accurate picture. And so you can see, like, if I take, you know, if I were to take the most recent one here, so this one here ran about 13 minutes ago. If I look at this record over here, I can see that I own 15 named licenses and I own 5 concurrent licenses. Of those 15 named licenses, I have allocated it to 1 user, which means I'm only using 6%, 7% of my licensing. And then right now, that 1 user is logged in to the system. So, you know, if this was status quo, come renewal time, I could drop my license count from 15 down to 1 and save myself a lot of money. Now, obviously, you know, this is my demo environment, so that's why there's not a lot of users in here. On the concurrent side, you can see I have 5 concurrent licenses. It's been allocated to 55 users. Now, with named licenses, you can never allocate to more users than what you have licenses to. So if I only have 15, I can only allocate it to 15 users. The moment I try to allocate to 16, it will block me. You know, that's the nature of a named license. It's always available to that user. Whereas a concurrent, you know, it's a pool. So I have 5 licenses in the pool. I've given it to 55 users. And so that gives me an allocation ratio of 11 to 1. And like I said, the recommendation is 2.5 to 3, but that ratio can vary, you know, case by case, depending on your individual needs, right? You might say, hey, I have a lot of like these manager type people that log into the system once a week, once a month to do a little bit of work, but otherwise they're not in the system. So you might say, well, for us, you know, a ratio of 5 to 1 is acceptable or something. But here, you know, you can see the ratio of what's allocated, and then I can see 1 person is logged in, so I still have 4 more that can log in. So I'm using 20% of my license. So I'll give you that information every 15 minutes. You can then, you know, export that to CSV or whatever you want, do your analysis. Again, you know, come renewal time, am I using too much? Am I using the right amount? Do I need more? You know, I've just onboarded this new team. I want to onboard this new team. You know, hopefully you guys can see the information it gives you here. And kind of as a quote unquote bonus, I added in customers as well, because when I was developing this, to add in customers was not a lot of extra work. So I added them in, but you'll see, you know, they don't consume licenses. So here I can just see I have 13 customer users and 1 of them is logged in right now. And what this allows you to determine is what is the usage of your self-service, right? How many people are actually using self-service? You might say, hey, I spent a butt ton of money and effort and time developing self-service, and only, you know, 7% of my users are actually using self-service. Okay, maybe I should start an education campaign, you know, internally with my users and say, hey, we got this self-service, start using it, please. Or, you know, maybe the reverse, right? I see a lot of people are logging in the self-service, but I haven't really developed it. I haven't put in a lot of knowledge articles. I haven't really developed my service catalog. Well, I see the adoption rate is so high, maybe I should start doing more to it. So gives you a little bit of information on your usage. Okay, so that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about on this month's session. We do have session 4 for next month planned. It will be on February the 8th. Look out for an email from myself in the next week or so. I'm, maybe not this week, early next week. Hopefully I have the email out to you guys with the topics and the subscription link. And we hope to see you there. Thank you very much for attending and have a great rest of your day.